Sometime last year, I had the idea to re interview some of our past guests. Call me a nostalgic 90s child. It's kind of like a VH1 style, where are they now update. Did the Potter who was right at the beginning of taking that leap and going full time, quote unquote, make it? Are they still full time? Did it work? Whatever that means. Do they have another part time job to support this transition? Have they brought in revenue from a variety of sources, or is it really only selling the work that they make? These kind of reality check, behind the scene type questions were what was on my mind when I came up with the idea for this new series here on the podcast entitled, Where Are They Now? Or if you're scrolling through future episodes, I'll probably shorten it to WATN, just for the sake of title length in your podcast app. And while I think this type of check in is going to be really insightful, I could have never anticipated what would be our first Where Are They Now chat, and that it would be as extreme as the reality of recovering from a natural disaster. When I last spoke with Sarah Wells Rolland, the Village Potters in Asheville, North Carolina, was 13 years into its incredible communal existence. And frankly, at least from my perspective, it was a well-oiled machine. With a residency program, community classes, and a gallery, and 17 kilns, it wasn't really on my short list of wondering, gee, I wonder where they are now. It was kind of obvious how they were going to continue to grow this beautiful community. That is, until Hurricane Helene hit, and absolutely everything changed. And while this conversation with Sarah is filled with hope and pragmatic action that we can take for the future of the Village Potters, I do want to very transparently say the realities of experiencing, living through, and still actively recovering from a natural disaster are discussed. In the event that stirs up any past traumas or pains for you, my maker friend listening, this might not be the episode for you. My original chat with Sarah and her business partner Lori is back on episode 212, and it would be a lovely listen to still hear Sarah's story if that's a better fit for you right now. Either way, I cannot wait for you to get to know Sarah Wells Rolland and her unending commitment to creating beautiful communal spaces right after this brief word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Haystack School of Crafts. From a stunning coastal Maine campus, Haystack connects people through craft by providing time and space to engage with materials, develop new ideas, and work in a creative and supportive community. From June through August, Haystack offers 1- and 2-week studio workshops to participants of all skill levels, taught by professional artists from the U.S. and abroad, as well as the 2-week Open Studio Residency Program. For 2025, Haystack is offering a brand new 4-day session called Square One, expressly created for beginners. Registration is now open for the 2025 summer season, but the fellowship application deadline is today, January 24th. The general workshop and Square One application deadline is February 7th, and the Open Studio Residency application deadline is March 14th. You can find more information on all that Haystack offers by visiting haystack-mtn.org. That's haystack-mtn.org. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 14 years, Rebecca Ikes Cara. I just hit record and realized I don't have a clever re-welcome, like a welcome back to the podcast. So right there it is. So hey, Sarah, welcome back.
Oh, it's such a delight to be back. I always love chatting with you.
It was so much fun before. I'm thrilled to have you on. I'm not thrilled for the reason, but I know this story is important and there is so much more to be told of it. I feel like when we chatted last, it felt like, everything was all tidied up in a nice little bow and circle and the Village Potters was off into the races. Now it's like, oh, actually, we were only halfway through the novel. There's so much more story to go, but
Yes.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I already mentioned the Village Potters, so take it away.
I'm Sarah Wells Rolland, and my husband and I own the Village Potters, and we are a collective with 5 other potters at this time right now. And the collective of potters do all the workings of the Village Potters Clay Center. When I talked to you last, we were thriving. I mean, we had it going on. And then, of course, we're talking now because Hurricane Helene literally gave us 26 feet of water. So we had everything underwater. We even took some stuff upstairs, Rebecca, and the water went upstairs. 3 feet of water where we put our stuff. So it was just, it was colossal. It was a disaster that one cannot anticipate.
And I think for people not familiar with the North Carolina region, the Asheville area, and even having been there and knowing it, what took my brain a couple times thinking about it was the realization of there was a hurricane in the Appalachian Mountains. The distance from you to the sea is not small.
It's true. And you know what's really weird? And I believe it has to do with the rising temperature of the Gulf of Mexico, which averages like 86 degrees now, which is crazy. We were flooded inside our facility while the hurricane was still in the Gulf of Mexico because it was so big. The eye had not even come up into the panhandle in Georgia when we were completely inundated with water.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Isn't that crazy? And 26 feet of water, I don't remember how many inches it was, but it happened overnight. And then the hurricane came and blew all the trees down, and so people lost their roofs. I mean, people lost their lives. It's just been shocking. And unlike some states like Florida, who has preparations in plan for when it happens, Asheville doesn't because this is a new paradigm. And so, believe it or not, and I know it was on the national news, there was maybe 56 or 58 days where nobody had water. There was no cell service for weeks. There was no power for weeks. It was for the people that live in that area. It was insane. It was insane. I live one county over and it was terrible. But where we were at our house, we were only out of power for a couple of days. And then we were locked in because bridges were washed out. Yeah, the city was not prepared for it. The community, the larger Western North Carolina community, did not have a grid for this level of a disaster.
Well, and also, I mean, especially when it comes to water in a hurricane, not to be trite about it, but why would they have when you're in, maybe there should have been a grid for a earthquake or even I mean, you guys don't even get tornadoes. I'm trying to think of what
Yeah.
it,
Well,
it's.
frankly, the Village Potters Clay Center was across the street from the French Broad River,
Mhm.
and it came out of its banks and rose 4 feet in 2004. We didn't occupy the space till 2011. And I have to say, in the last 3 years, because we had such a bad flood in my county, I started looking for other facilities because I thought, oh no, this is going to happen. But we couldn't afford anything. We still can't afford anything on the business model that we have, but we're moving forward and there's a lot of people that are helping us figure it out. I mean, I have a business advisory team. I have all kinds of people that are helping financially, in counsel, in all the ways so that we can make this adjustment in this new paradigm. It's a lot, Rebecca, a lot.
I mean, I think one thing that immediately struck me with watching from afar and checking in with you guys online was there's one level of trying to figure out kind of your basic needs, if you will, immediately days following. But for those of us who are self employed, it's almost insult to injury. It's the layers in which the things you have to figure out just compound upon themselves because how can you rebuild when you can't also work to earn the money to rebuild? It's like this compounding problem.
So, the first time in my life, I'm asking for money. When the COVID thing hit, I didn't feel that way because I made those 500 vessels and sold them. I ended up making 650, I think, but I sold them. So people bought them and it supported. This is the first time where I can't do that. There's nowhere for me to do that. So I just have to say, please help. That has been strange, but I so much believe in who we are as a group and who we are as a community and what we offer to Western North Carolina that it became easier for me to realize that we needed to come back. But it took me a while. I was so traumatized by it. There were people on the team that were stronger than me. It took me 2 days to even decide to come back. And then I did. I was like, we're doing it. And then my brain was like scrambled eggs, and I'd be going, we're doing it. And then I'd be, what are we, nuts? We need hundreds of thousands of dollars. Everything that we became, we did over 13 years, and we took profit and did more, and took profit and did more, and took profit and did more. One of the good things, though, and I want to say thank you to a lot of organizations, is that you know how when you're self employed and you're a for profit, there's not a lot of grant money.
Right.
That is not the case right now. Usually it's all for nonprofits, but that's not the case right now. Right now, there is grant monies available. And I have worked while my brain was scrambled eggs. I was applying for grants, which is not my skill set. The first week or so, I didn't even keep good notes about what I did. And then I finally went to Staples and bought one of those huge Post-its, that are like 3 by 2 or something. And they're all over my wall. So when I do something in my living room, I'd go over there and write the information on it. Because I forgot how to access documents in Google. It's weird how when your brain is so traumatized, you can't do the simplest things. So I was writing for grants when I was pretty close to insane. I haven't received all that I applied for, but it's a miracle that we have gotten some, because when I think of the state I was in when I was doing it, oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, applying for a grant is so much effort in the best of times. Like, I've looked at some, and not to belittle, like, every little bit counts. We know this in terms of holding up a business in any way. But at the same time, if I look at a $500 grant, let's say, for example, and it's gonna take me 3 days to put together, I'm kinda like, "Eh,
Exactly.
I'm gonna sell more pots."
Right.
And that's in the best of mental spaces.
Well, I want to say this too. It's not all the grants I applied for, but some of the grants were sensitive to that. And they would do like a step one, and you could find out from the step one whether you were even going to be considered before you did all these narratives and all this information and uploading all the tax returns. And, it was just good night. It was crazy. So there has been some grace for that, I think, that they're kind of realizing that we're a little bit insane right now to even try to do it.
That sounds like the way the system should always work in my mind of like step one, because if you're not even going to get past that, why have people do days of work that they're submitting to you that then you have to, whoever you being the universal, whoever's reading the grants, that just makes sense. That should just be the way it always
You
is.
know what else was weird is some of the grants, there were so many applications, they had to do a lottery before they'd even look at the application. So one, I just didn't even make the draw. I didn't know that until after I didn't make the draw. I was like, oh gosh, so that was a gamble anyway. you know?
Well, and also to have the deadlines for so many, I mean, that was the interesting thing coming out of social media was the different ways resources were being shared to know like, hey, here's this link for this or this for that. But, to have to immediately turn around and do that when you're still just barely processing what happened is insanity to me. Not your own personal, but systemic insanity.
No, it felt like it. It felt like it. And to be honest, and I will share this because it's not just me, probably about 4 or 5 weeks in, I had the revelation I needed to go see my doctor and go on an antidepressant because I couldn't organize my thoughts. I just couldn't get them organized, and it has helped immensely. I think it's event related, and I don't know, there's no shame in having a mental issue, but every friend that I've talked to, every neighbor that I've talked to has expressed the same thing, that they could not organize their thoughts. Some people still can't, and we were required to be at our best, to recover. So you're absolutely right. It was and is still overwhelming, but I feel like me again. I feel normal again, and I'm really grateful for that.
That's wonderful.
When it first happened and the waters receded, there was this crew of people that love us, and that we were all over there in mud boots. Mud was this deep. Everything was covered in mud, everything knocked over. I'll send you some pictures. I was not one of the stronger personalities in the trauma. I was responding a lot of, let's just get a few things that you can fix, and then let's walk away. And then my friends, I have my instructor from college who has remained a friend and mentor all the way from the 80s, my husband, and then our studio manager, Julia Mann, who is a Renaissance woman that can do anything. Well, they're kind of hoarders. And it really worked for us. I mean, I'm telling you the truth. And Gary and George and Julia can fix anything. So we're like, no, we're fixing the slab rollers. No, they've repaired all 37 wheels that were under 26 feet of water, even the Shimpos with those electric
Magnetic,
components.
right, like
I don't understand. So they're going to cut the wood, make the new tabletops for the Soldners. They're repairing all the slab rollers. Now, we had 17 kilns, and people were saying you can repair the kilns. So George took 2 to work to try, but the roof fell on most of them. So they're smashed and ruined. So we have to buy and replace kilns. That's a given. But we were loading trucks up with stuff, and we were also scramble brained. I said, George, where are we taking it? Wait a minute, we've got a serious problem. So we called a friend, and he has an apple orchard with an apple barn that doesn't operate anymore. And he loaned us his huge apple barn indefinitely at no cost. And there has been a restoring of the equipment that's been going on there for months now. And it's amazing because George and Julia and Karen Dubois, and I'm in her studio right now, they train people that come over to volunteer how to take the motors apart, how to completely clean them, pack new bearings in, all the things. And then they just train people who've never done it before, and people come in and do it. And people have come over to the barn with their own wheels and restored them, learning with our wheels and then restore their own. So it's been pretty magical, actually. It's been amazing.
pragmatically speaking, how is that possible? Because let's also just get a timeline for anybody who's forgotten or listening, I don't know, in the far off future that I can't imagine yet. Hurricane Helene hit on
I think it was September 27th is when we got flooded. I think that's when it was. It took 3 days for the waters to recede.
right.
Yeah.
So and you said September 27th?
So it's October, November, and now we're in late December. It's almost 3 months.
Yep. How have people been able to kind of sustain themselves in these 3 months in terms of just even fixing equipment takes so much time to be able to keep doing that work and also, I'm just hoping nobody is going into massive credit card debt in order to actually recover. That's what I'm getting at.
No, they're not. So Karen Dubois and Julia Mann. Julia is drawing what's called a disaster relief unemployment. And so but it's not much. And she's getting a small weekly stipend. I think she would have worked herself into the poorhouse because of her spirit and who she is. So I created a GoFundMe for her and put it out there. And we have been raising money for her while during this season, she's there. Well, the first 3 weeks, they worked 7 days a week. And that's when I was the insane woman at the house doing the grants, all by myself, profound loneliness, and go over there and do a live stream every once in a while. And then I talked to George and I said, George, this isn't sustainable. Y'all have to do Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, stop, rest, or everybody's going to die. And George and Julia and Karen and myself, we're not young chickens. We have some young chickens around, but we're not. And so everyone was in agreement. And so that's what we dropped back and did. So there's been funding. There's been people that have taken on the volunteers that are coming over. And then all the washing of the stuff, that was kind of different people every day. And Lindsay Mudge, who was our operations manager for years, who has small twins right now, she went to work for us from home and started organizing the calendar where you could get on that you're coming. And so for weeks, it was pressure washing and cleaning. And then there was this big shift to now we're going to repair. And now it's not as many people because lots of people, including myself, are kind of intimidated by that. Taking motors apart, packing bearings. I don't even know really what that means. But there are people that are coming and volunteering and helping, but it's a constant that it's George and Julia and Karen. And so it's happening every Monday through Friday over in that barn. So they dragged out the work tables, they dragged out the slab rollers, they got out the wear carts, the rolling wear carts. All the shelves are gone because they just swelled and worked. All the bats and the posts and the shelving, all that's gone. But the things that they salvaged and then pressure washed is astounding. And I think that they will have the majority of that work done in another month. I'm going to say we're all taking Christmas off. We're taking 6 or 7 days. I can't remember. And then coming back at it in January. And then I think it'll be done.
What I hope people are hearing also is the amount of organizational skill it takes to recover from something like this is astounding. When I think of, that's why I'm so amazed by the work that World Central Kitchen does.
They were there.
The speed in which they can respond to something. It's one thing, I guess I saw it happen with Katrina in college because I took a group of students down in school. But by the time we got down there, there was this surge of people who wanted to show up and help. But also there was this surge of people who wanted to be there to show that they were helping. And so there was this weird, there were too many volunteers. It had been long enough after that it was in this weird phase of recovery where, a lot of people had decided they weren't going to go back. They had moved. They had left what was left of their houses, was just like, well, that's done. And so we wound up being in the basement of a public library helping sort through old stacks of books or something. And all these students were like, well, that's not what I said. They wanted to have a hammer into a wall. And it was like, well, this is what they need right now. And I've completely lost my train of thought of where I was going with this statement. But, there's just so many layers to recovery, I think, in terms of knowing, to have the organizational ability, to have the logistics like World Central Kitchen does, to be able to have the connections to make the logistics happen, to give meaningful help to something in a situation like this is just astounding. I mean, it's a miracle.
That's exactly what happened, just exactly what you described. So the building we're in is 120,000 square feet. We had 14,000 of it. There was about a week or 2 weeks, maybe it was 2 weeks, I'm not sure, before all the volunteers from all over the country showed up. And then it was like, how do you organize that? And so they had this tent in the front, and the owner of the building's daughter and her husband sort of oversaw the whole thing. We were trying to get stuff out because they were mucking it out and dumping stuff outside so fast that we had to get our stuff preserved before it just got thrown in a scrap heap. Oh my God, I call them the angels. They're just, these people were just shoveling piles of wet mud covered in this toxic junk with masks on, dealing with it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they just drove in from all over the country. So they really did get to do that kind of work. And World Kitchen was there before they were. And World Kitchen brought food every single day to that building and fed people. I'm talking good food.
Right. That's the thing. They're not bringing MREs, meals ready to eat.
It was delicious little meals. And then there was tons of donated bars and sustaining things and waters, and the work was astounding. But what you said about organization, when they started really tearing the wet walls out and stuff, it was hard for the owners to keep up with it. So they did tear out things that didn't need to be torn out, and that was unfortunate, like studs for walls
Oh god.
torn out. I was like, "Oh, no." You know, but still so grateful because there's this weird thing that you have a timeline.
Mhm.
And you have a timeline of a certain amount of time for the building not to be condemned because of black mold. And so there was a panic about it, to get it out so we can get it pressure washed. And they made the timeline, but everybody felt that. And I can't tell you, I love my landlady, Helene Green, so much. She has my heart. We just held each other and cried. I don't even know how many times, a lot of times. And so, fortunately, her young kids could handle it more than she could. But she was doing the refunding because we'd already paid the rents. She was like me back on the computer trying to deal with all the closing out of what had happened. And in their case, they had been the last 5, 7 years, probably put in $3 million into the building and upgrades, a new roof on 120,000 square feet. So the loss for them is just overwhelming. And so, I think of our loss and then I think of them, and it just, breaks my heart. But they're coming back too because people are resilient. I'm
Mhm.
always astounded. And trauma like this and tragedy brings people together in a way like nothing else can. I mean, yeah, it's fun to dance and sing around a bonfire, but I tell you what, when there is tragedy, it's amazing how people rise up.
Mhm. I saw that also with, Josh and Marshall and that entire, like, the speed in which house it didn't seem like and this is always and after this, I wanna kinda move into the next steps that you guys have and where we're at now. We don't have to stay in the muck of it, literally. But, Asheville is a spot on the map a lot of people know. It's much the way that it happened with New Orleans. It's a tourist hotspot. There's an incentive to wanna get that going again because of the economics of the state or what have you. And Marshall being as tiny as it is, I'm sure there was outside help coming in, but what I was seeing, at least online, was just this literal community taking themselves from one building to the next. Everybody who lived there, and it's not a lot there's not a big population. This is a tiny town from my understanding of it, and they're ready to go in some ways, it seems like.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Absolutely beautiful community. The thing that was so tragic for them was that was their town, where the justice center was, where the town hall was. And speaking of Josh Kopus, he had multiple businesses right in town. So he got devastated on so many levels. And to watch him, I'm sure he was just like me in terms of traumatized, but to watch him say, we're coming together. He's a leader by nature, working with people to save the town, not just his businesses, but the whole town. Remarkable person. And I think that community that is the people now that will have experienced this together will be so closely knit. This generation right now, oh, the bonds that they're going to have. And I believe that in Asheville too. We're just a lot bigger. We're just a lot bigger. And also, downtown did not flood. It's
Mm,
not like the whole city's gone. It's like parts of it. But Swannanoa, gone. Chimney Rock, gone. It's just devastating to think about Chimney Rock, Bat Cave, Marshall, the small areas where those communities were so tight and solid. They have to come back from total devastation, their whole towns, and lots of loss of life. They have to grieve and experience that. Swannanoa, I have a friend that lives there, and I drove to her house the other day, and I could hardly look while my husband drove. It was so traumatic to see what had happened along the Swannanoa River, because that's where people live.
mhm.
People weren't living at Riverview Station where my business was. They're unhoused people, though. I think we'll never know, the unhoused people that were lost. We'll never know that. It's sad.
There's no record, yeah. Well, and I think just to again, for anybody who's not familiar, in a mountain area, the towns follow the river. The roads follow because that's where you can also build, right? You're on a mountain, and so it's natural to build roads along a river because that's also kind of the mother nature guide, if you will, in terms of something that has already cut through the mountain, if you will, like, for lack of a better.
And there was mountain slides. It's crazy. I know it's terrible to talk about, but I heard a man in Chimney Rock being interviewed. He lost his house completely. He had 2 rental properties he'd built on that property, lost them completely. And then he had a fishing tackle business on the property. He lost everything but his life. Everything. He was standing on his mud slick land. I just thought, and he was 58 years old. And I thought, what's he going to do? What do you do? I guess you just go rent an apartment, get a job, and wait and hope you have Social Security. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. He's lost everything. We hear about it. I've heard about it, on Caribbean islands and Haiti and, like you said, Katrina, but I will never hear it the same way again when other people experience this. I will never, go, oh, that's so sad. Now I'm going to be like, you know,
Yeah.
to have experienced what this is like. Yeah. And I grew up in Florida. We just shouldered hurricanes. Granted, they're different now, but, we just got down low in the house and hung on and then came back up.
Oh gosh. And I mean, the thing I think about also with that is that, and I think this is maybe a little true of the Rivers Arts District. You definitely clarify and correct me. But the tricky thing with the recovery as well is if you've personally decided, hey, this place is important to me, I'm staying here, I'm going to recover. But for a place like, my brain just completely blanks on all the names you've just talked about. Chimney Rock, for
Chimney Rock,
example.
Bat Cave, Marshall,
Yep.
Swannanoa.
Swannanoa is what I was thinking of. A place where, if everything got affected, the recovery, you have to have enough people to agree to the recovery to come back because you're talking utilities, electricity, the internet, even being a nice to have when we're talking about this. You're not necessarily going to rebuild without an infrastructure available to you. It doesn't work the same way, and I know that happened a little bit on a different level with Katrina as well in terms of the neighborhoods that got support to rebuild versus the neighborhoods that didn't and what that looked like for how many people came back.
It's the same like oceanfront property up here. It's riverfront property. It was so beautiful. People wanted it. Now I don't know. It's like that's not like, oh, gee, I sure would love to be overlooking the Swannanoa River. Not 26 feet of water. That's terrifying. There's a real culture here of some people that think this is once in 1,000 years, and
Mm,
other people that think, things have changed. I'm of the latter. I think that the warming of the Gulf of Mexico has changed things for the whole southeastern United States and has changed things all the way up the eastern seaboard. Because the Gulf of Mexico, I'm from St. Petersburg originally. It used to be you stepped in the water and it cooled you off. Now it's a warm water.
yeah, you can take a bath.
It is. It's weird. And so I noticed that several years ago when we were down there hanging out. I was like, gosh, this water has it really, really warmed up, and that's just changing everything.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be a gloom and doomer because I think human beings are amazingly resilient, and I think we'll find different ways to live. I just don't think that we're all going to be building on beautiful waterfront places. It's not going to work out that way. And I think in the mountains, people are going to take down the trees that are right around their house. You know,
Mm,
I don't think towering 300, we have 2 300-year-old oaks towering over our log cabin. Thank God they're still standing there.
yeah. Yeah.
They're huge, just massive. Be sad to take them down, but what are you going to do?
I mean, the things that were once desirable because of the beauty then become scary.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So the city of Asheville is tight. We are a better community in many ways for it, even though it's been traumatic. There was these tents all over the city in every little neighborhood with diapers and water and outdoor showers with, the black bags to heat the water up so people could bathe. And all the neighbors got to know each other. It was like a
Mm.
big gathering at those tents. And so I think the communities, even in Asheville, the small nestled communities that all together collectively make Asheville are stronger now. People know their neighbors. They help each other out. Not that they weren't good neighbors. It's just different now, closer.
Of course. Yeah, you can wave hello to someone on the street on an average day, but that's completely different than when you're standing in line for bottles of water.
I have one friend who lives in Malvern Hills, and they did this one day a week where they would all go out in the street and everybody would bring food and they'd have a big meal together. Isn't that wonderful? And just share, and one person would bring the grill out and all the sides and just connect and say, we're going to be all right. Everything being used with bottled water,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of recovery, I mean, I've got a couple of questions, but I also just want you to tell us where we're at. But, Asheville prior to Helene was not a cheap place to be. And now that there's been this huge, event is such a lame word to use, but that's where my brain went. I think on the one side, there's a hope of like, oh, maybe it's affordable now because not everybody's coming back. The demand is different than what it was. But I've got a feeling that's not the case.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because there's so many displaced people, this is specifically true with businesses, that many of the real estate owners in commercial are not from Asheville. They're from other countries even. And so now they see this need, this high demand for commercial property. And so it's gone up. We are really blessed because we are negotiating a property with a large real estate person in Asheville, but he lives in Asheville. So he has a sensitivity that others don't. If you're a real estate developer from somewhere else, it's just about money. And some properties are being dumped, that developers in other countries are going, look, this is a depressed area now, so that business is probably going to go out of business. So businesses that weren't even flooded are losing their facilities because their
Mm.
buildings are going up for sale to other real estate developers. So there's a lot of awful things that are happening. But I have to say, Rebecca, it's padded with good. It's padded with people that are concerned, like what we're working on to go into. There's a lot of grace for us to make it possible. I look forward to announcing it when I can because I just am really pleased with how it's gone for us. There's a big, huge, I don't even know how many square foot building that's been sitting empty out in Weaverville. And the powers that be in Weaverville are trying to turn that into a North End art center for artists and make it affordable. So there's things that are happening. There's some buildings for artists that are being bought up and they're saying, we'll lease you property for $30 to $50 a square foot.
To put that into perspective for everybody, that's a lot.
Yeah, but there's like, oh, work on your business plan. And you're like, okay, we didn't go out of business. We are smart business people. Most people think there's this myth that artists are knuckleheads when it comes to business. And you and I know that is not true.
Hmm.
But it doesn't mean that our business models are going to make us rich. Usually that is not the case. We are choosing a passion and an income that sustains us well, that's workable. So to make a business plan to, pay that kind of price when you were paying maybe $6, $8 a square foot and to leap up to 50, It's undoable.
I was just gonna say, my brain told me in my memory, my storefront studio in Chicago was somewhere in the vicinity of $5 a square foot. And I was thinking to myself, that can't possibly be right because that's way too, maybe it was 15, maybe it was half. And I'm just but now that you've just said that, yeah, we're not talking double the cost. We're talking 10 times.
It's undoable. It's just undoable. There isn't a business model that you would be an artist and make that work. You would have to become a manufacturing artist. And if we're going to do that, then that's not what we're doing. I'm not interested in mass producing pots. I'm interested in a creative flow, an evolution of my work, teaching and mentoring. That's the life I want, and I would like it to be in Asheville, and I would like for Asheville to sustain that and help us do it. There was an article in the, oh golly, I think it was NBC that did it, and it said that last year, the arts community brought $3 billion into the city of Asheville. Well, we didn't get the $3 billion, that's for sure, but hotels, restaurants, all the things. And there were that many people that said they came to Asheville because of the arts community. So I know the powers that be in Asheville do not want to lose us. I just don't know that anybody knows how to make it work with what's happened with gentrification in Asheville.
Right.
No,
Right.
unless there are people that are philanthropic, and that's gonna be what it's gonna take, is somebody says, "I have a wonderful building, and it's more important to me that artists are sustained than and I make $300,000 a year instead of
Instead of 6.
2,000,000,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to do it because I'm a multi-millionaire." It's just I don't know. We're just gonna see over time what will happen, but there isn't a business plan to absorb that. It's not that I'm negative, I just know that that's true.
I mean, I don't even think there's a retail business plan. Like, I don't know that any kind of chain would necessarily say, "Oh, yeah, sure, we'll take that. We'll take that rent." Like,
Yeah, I know. I'll sell my mugs for $1,000 each.
I don't even think that'll do it, Sarah.
I don't either. And you could take a 2.5-hour class with me for $10,000.
Right. And then let's just even pretend. Let's pretend we do something like that. Then you're also saying, okay, now the arts are only accessible to people who can spend $10,000 for an afternoon. And
Exactly.
that becomes a whole thing. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, there is an exodus that's happening in Asheville. It's specifically or predominantly young people that were working hard anyway to stay here. The rents were so high. Friends of mine, single women in their late 30s that still had to share a house, that couldn't have their own apartment because it's so expensive. I'm talking about artists, and they don't want roommates at that point in their life, right? They wanna have a full and complete life. So, a lot of those folks are leaving town, they're just like, "This is the time." And so, I know that the community is worried about it because let's face it, that's the next generation. That's the people that are gonna sustain and keep this going on.
I mean, that's what I was thinking about in terms of just the history in and around Asheville and Western North Carolina of the arts, but specifically of clay. Maybe there's a couple other spots in the country, that have a similar history, but the depth of it there and the number of artists, specifically in the River Arts District, was just so huge, to envision. I immediately go to the gentrification of, okay, if it was already expensive, to make it more expensive, it kind of becomes vanilla. It become, like, yeah.
And maybe our listeners even need to know this if they're not familiar with Asheville. But just in our building, in this one building in the River Arts District, over 100 artists are displaced. Well over 100. And there's multiple buildings along the river. So, and then you talk about Marshall. We're talking about thousands of displaced artists. I'm not sure people realize that Asheville's like Santa Fe. that it's just there's so many artists here. It's not like Santa Fe. It's completely different, but it is known for its arts culture. So we're not talking about 30 artists, that lost their businesses. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artists. Yeah.
Well, and like you said before we hit record, there's some mediums that maybe can come back a little faster, right? If I'm a painter, I can set my easel up in whatever apartment I can find or wherever I'm living temporarily and keep going if I can have the mental energy to do that and produce something to sell to be able to have some funds until I get a more permanent workspace. But as potters, the number of resources you have to hand build, to wheel throw, just to make wet work, let alone have a kiln, glaze it, fire it, is a big difference. And that's also particular to me to Asheville because the clay history was so deep.
And the individual potter would need a minimum of $80,000, not counting a building with a
Mm.
total loss. And I have lots of friends. We were a center, so we had 17 kilns. We had 4 slab rollers. We had 3 fully equipped educational studios, a full media center for teaching online, 4 showrooms of a gallery, our back stock room. It was just, it's still mind boggling, but we provided something really special to Asheville. We have that craft center, and then Odyssey Center for Creative Arts is the other clay center. Thank God they were above the floodwaters, because right now what they've done is open their doors up and let people come in. I don't know how they're squishing them in there, but people are coming in there. Many of our people are over there right now making pots, using their kilns. They're just doing whatever they can to help because so many potters are displaced. This friend of mine, Kelsey Shizzle, who has a pottery studio in West Asheville, she just kind of put her business on pause, turned what is a small studio space, maybe 20 by 20. I don't know, not that big. And she just let people bring wheels in, and there's maybe 4 or 5 other potters using her kilns. She's getting clay for them. She's getting glaze materials for them because their income is kaput. And she is just, I think the name of her business is Plays in Mud Pottery, but she has been serving the community. That's happening all over Asheville for potters because of this obstacle. But a glass blowing community studio lost everything. A woodworking community studio, they had all the woodworking tools gone down the river.
Yeah.
It's just like, whew, it's kind of shocking if you really look at the big picture. Our story is not unique. It
Mhm.
is not unique. And do you know, I would be interesting to know, Rebecca, how much money has come to Asheville through GoFundMe. I would be interested to know because almost every artist has a GoFundMe. Almost every business has a GoFundMe, and they're successful. Ours has not generated all that we need, but we have generated over $130,000. I mean, to me, that's a lot of money,
Yeah.
And then we have some flood insurance. We're getting that to help us. And then people have mailed us money in the mail. And I'm getting ready to go on a traveling tour. And this is really interesting. I'm getting good at just asking, please help, because I'm touring to Florida, to North Carolina, to Pennsylvania, to Ohio. I'm probably forgetting somewhere.
We've got a spare room. I know a community studio.
And literally donating the money. Like they'll keep their operating expenses, credit card, whatever that they have to do, and donating the money. Some of them are nonprofits and they're like, we'll give you half. But when do you do a workshop at a center and you get half of the money? Never, because the costs to have a brick and mortar is so high. So I will be generating money while they're upfitting so that we can continue with this unbelievable cost. I think we need $400,000. We're not there yet. I kind of pulled it out of my hat based on what we've lost and what the cost of real estate is and what I think the cost of upfitting is. It may be I underestimated, but I think we're gonna be all right. My husband keeps saying, "Nope, it's gonna do it." I mean, we're gonna have to buy signs, just everything.
Right. So are
Yeah,
you guys trying to this was what I was curious about too, is because sometimes, when we're in the thick of it, we just keep going and going. And this obviously forced you to stop and take stock of, okay, here's where we were at. Was it, I mean, from my perspective, it was working beautifully. And when we first had our first interview, which I'll link in the show notes here, I was ready to pick up and move because I was like, all right, I found my people, time to go. Still feel that way though. I'd still come for Village Potters 2.0. But are you guys looking to rebuild to the same scale, the same quantity? What's the future as you see it now?
we're gonna be bigger. Yeah, it was not the plan, but in Asheville, there's not much real estate with parking. So we had a choice to either be 1/4 the size we were, or maybe, I can't do the math, but let me see, maybe 20% bigger. And so we went with bigger because as we looked, and this was my husband and me, we've had one meeting where we all got together, the Village Potters team and administration, and we sat at the table here in Karen's house. That was months ago, and just was, are we going to do this? Are you going to come back? Because everybody was scrambling, finding places to work and make an income, right?
Right. Yeah.
My anxiety was they're going to get a situation and not come back. And I'm going to build something and not have this dream group of people that we are that makes it all work. Well, all but one are coming back. And the one that isn't coming back is not because she doesn't love us and love who we are, but she had this dream to go to massage school. And so it was like, now's the time. And so she's down somewhere down east doing it. And then it's unreasonable to move back here because of the cost to live here. So we decided we were coming back. And from there, I have been looking for real estate. Every single day, I have the best real estate agents, Jesse and Luis Leonetti. They're with Town and Mountain Realty. They have worked so hard for us, but there was just nothing with parking. Nothing. And so this is the first place we found with parking. And I was like, oh no, he won't be very gracious in terms of what the rent is. It's not possible, but he was. And it's still, 3 times what we paid, but he was. And he's from here. But he has, I don't know him personally yet, but he has agreed to way below what he was asking for it, way below what the market value is for a building, for a space that's in great shape with incredible parking. And people were like, why don't you just go to Black Mountain? These peripheries of Asheville. And
Right.
I said, we can't do it. The business model is such that people that study with us, they come from all the areas of Western North Carolina, and Asheville's the center point. In order for us to be who we've been, we have to still be in the center point, and this is that. And so, as long and I hope that something doesn't mess it up, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's gonna go. I think it's gonna happen. And then my husband and Karen and Brian, who you saw working on my computer earlier, and Julia, I'm surrounded by these people that have no doubt. And do you know how encouraging that is when you are going, are we crazy? Oh no, oh no, we're going to be better than we ever were. And Karen says, don't worry, Sarah, they're coming back. I'm like, what if they don't come back? All our students, we'd have 100 students in a week, you know? And that's just in the community classroom. We have this independent study and mentoring program where we actually work with people to become professional potters. And we had 14 of those. We're going to have 24 now. I mean, I've been working on the business plan. We've had 24 before, so we can do it again. We shrunk it down during COVID and then we just never made it big again. But we can do it again and do more people. It's just, how do we do it really, really fast? Because the rent is really, really high. So what I'm hoping is that we have some coffers that's going to help us pay the rent, for a while, because I'm nervous for 2 reasons. One, it's really expensive. And second, Everybody in town's traumatized, and people aren't saying, "Hey, gee, I think I'll go to Asheville right now." That is not what's trending. So we're going to figure it out, though. And I hang around with these people that believe it. And that collective faith is powerful. It's real powerful.
I mean, on the plus side, how many people have I interviewed who said, I got into clay because I was looking for therapy? So, like, silver lining.
I hadn't thought about that, Rebecca. That encourages me.
There might be a lot of people looking for some tactile way to. I mean, I'm picturing even like a community day where you take all the pots that couldn't be salvaged or after a few beginner classes, things that got fired that shouldn't have been fired, and you have a good pot smash for therapy. And you just do donations. You get one pot for a whatever donation you want, and you smash it against a brick wall. It feels great. I did it during COVID before we left Italy. Let me tell
I'm
you.
writing that one down. And I'm encouraged about what you say because Lori, one of my studio mates, she always says pottery's cheaper than therapy. You
Yep.
know? Now, I believe in therapy and pottery personally. I am not in any way dismissing a good therapist.
Most of us probably should do both. I mean, at my old community studio in Chicago, the number of people who were members there who were therapists was fascinating because that was their kind of,
They need therapy because of what they listen to. It's traumatic.
right? It's a tactile thing. So,
Yeah.
but the other maybe more important thing that I kept hearing in this and from having talked before as well is to me, a lot of this resilience, a lot of the stamina to keep going, to your point, it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't a community. It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't already built a group of support around you when things were good.
100%. As a matter of fact, that we kind of talk about that it's all of us that makes us special. Even the core team, there's no one person. Did I write the business plan? I did. Did I have the first idea? Yes, I did. But who we are and what we are is not that. Because when we all came together, everybody brought their wonderfulness to the table and made us something even better than any one person could have imagined. And then you have the greater community, the people that come and study with us. And you know this, Rebecca, potters are just beautiful people. We fall in love with each other. I just love,
Literally.
literally. Oh, you did your husband a potter? I love that. But we do.
We literally met because of clay.
Oh, I love that. Well, we love each other. So the love and the hugs and the people at the barn and, just out there in their boots mucking our stuff out, it's their stuff too. This community, many are saying, just say when you're back, and when are you going to be upfitting? Because I want to come. You said it. I mean, it's just amazing. People that work in clay are beautiful, humble people. Last Saturday, I did the first of my traveling tour, and it was the Art League of Henderson County, which is one county over. So I knew a lot of people in the room. And the first thing I did was stand up and talk about the trauma. And then I said, but everybody in this room is traumatized. We have all experienced this together. Maybe you lost your cars. Maybe you lost your house. Maybe you lost somebody. Maybe you lost your business. But I know we're all in it together. And everybody in the room, almost everybody in the room was crying because it was true. And then I demonstrated, made pots, and it was just like if you've ever lost a loved one, it's so weird that you can laugh. In that grief, we had laughter, we cried, we were intense about making work. We did all the things in one day. And when it was all over, I believe every single one of us had experienced some healing just by getting together. Was astounding. Katie Maley Messersmith came and did it with me, and she's 29 and I'm 65. So here we were, two very different generations sharing the same experience, and then everybody in the room. It was just a beautiful thing.
Yep. Well, and it normalized it, right? In my mind, at least. Like everybody in the room who had some version of the story of it together, then again, it goes back to you don't feel alone. You don't feel weird for laughing because it's okay. And if that laughter then turns into tears and then goes back to laughter and then you need to smash a pot, It was all okay
It's all okay.
instead of feeling like you needed to be a certain way, I imagine.
And in February, when I go to the Moraine Center for Clay, it's the same thing. They got hit by Helene, and then right behind it was Milton. But I'm going to go down there and we're going to share our recovery together, our resilience together, our hope that we all tend to choose. You have to choose it. And when you do, it's powerful, isn't it? It's just
Totally.
powerful. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear so many people are coming back because that was also one of my first thoughts was recovery takes so long. I mean, it's to connect it to something for people that maybe haven't experienced trauma like this, regardless of if you're restarting a business after a natural disaster or if you're just starting a business. I'm realizing you have to have enough runway to get it going, right? And a lot of times the thing you're trying to do will work. It's just a matter of did you plan for that long of a runway to get there, right?
And are you willing to pivot?
And so just thinking about the amount of runway you need for recovery from something like this, and then the full-time potters who are and were a part of the Village Potters where this is the only income, we don't like you said in the beginning, a lot of us are savvy from a business standpoint, but you're not necessarily bringing in so much that you've got a 6-month or year's worth of runway to kind of stick it out. Even if somebody wants to come back, it's like, well, here's my reality now, though, and I got to do something about this.
Not one of us had any coffers. Not George and me. We had $100,000 worth of debt in the business against our house. You know, everybody that I work with was living a comfortable life because the business was sustaining, but nobody had coffers. That's like, I'm just not going to worry about it because I got $400,000 in the bank. I'll ride this thing out. Not a one of us. We're crazy, living our dreams life people. I have this saying, making money has never been one of my large goals, and I've been successful at it. It's just never been like in the top tier of I've got to make a lot of money. I love my life, Rebecca. I loved everything we were doing, who we were doing it with, and I want it back. And it's insane because my husband's 70 and I'm 65, and most people retire and go play cribbage and,
Go back to St. Pete's.
yeah, but I don't wanna stop doing this. I don't wanna stop. I love it, and I think in the craft and art world, when you're at the point of life that I am, there is so much to give away to the next generation. It's almost a sad thing to stop, because the young people, we just give everything away. This is how I did that, and this is how I did that, and this was what didn't work in my business, and this is what works. And they help me, the young people help me with how to do graphics and how to do an Instagram story. It's like there's this beautiful relationship that goes on, and I don't want to give that up. I will probably work till I'm 80 if I physically can. People think work is a bad word, but I love it. I just love it.
I was really surprised to hear you say a specific age because I've got a feeling, eh, I don't know. We'll still be talking in 15 years and we'll see what happens.
I think so. If my health will hold up, I'm pretty strong. It's not like I'm not having some issues. My husband and I both take medication now. We're like, oh, well, did you take your pills? But
Right.
I really think that, this is strange, but I'm going to say it. I know people that retire and then their health goes down really quickly. I believe that what the Village Potters is and what community does and passionate work keeps you strong, keeps you mentally acute, keeps you happy. And so you stay healthier. Now, I don't want to work 60 hours. Let's be honest. That's not happening. And I wasn't working 60 hours before this flood. I'm working a good solid 40 to 50 right now, but I'm not going to do that. The young people can do that, but I would like to work 30. I would love that. I just a nice, easy day and hanging out with amazing people and sharing. Yeah, I want to do that.
Totally. I love that. See, again, even though so much has changed since I last talked to you, In some ways, so much has not because I have this warmness in my stomach and this desire to get on a plane immediately right now. Also could be because I'm looking out the window at snow and
We hope to have an astounding opening. We hope to have it sometime in the late spring. And if you come down and help us upfit, we welcome that. If you come down and hit that opening, I mean, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to have a dance floor and we're going to dance to Destiny's Child. We're going to have some old music, but there is going
Oh, wait, did we just say Destiny's Child was old music? Because that's making me feel a certain way.
Sorry, but it is. Yeah.
I know.
My music is even older, so I was trying to bring, it up, but I love that music to dance, and we are gonna dance, and we are going to have the best blowout party. It's not gonna be about the opening where you sell pots and all of that. We might sell some, but it's not gonna be about that. It's gonna be about we rose up, recovered, and you helped us do it. You're helping us right now, Rebecca. Everybody's helped us, and we're all gonna celebrate that it actually happened. And it's gonna happen, I believe it.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. I'm so excited. And I think the name is going to just be that much deeper of a meaning. It's going to sound corny, but it takes a village. That's the whole point.
It does, and, we didn't choose that name because of it, we chose that name because of a village is a small community, but boy, has that not proven to resonate, that it takes a village. It just has carried so far, and I worried people would be upset about it because the whole I love Hillary Clinton, but a lot of people didn't. You can cut this out if that's gonna lose listeners. But I loved her, and it does take a village. Almost anything, no man is an island, we can say all the things. Anything you do alone, I believe, is losing some of its potential.
Mm.
We were created to be connected. We were created for relationships. So, like you and your husband both being potters, you being a photographer and sharing so much of what you do to other potters, that is what we're all about. I've learned a lot from you, by the way. Yeah, thank you
Well,
so much. I don't want people to look at my photography and judge you, though. But you have to know that I knew nothing about photography. Um,
well, we'll come to a workshop after that opening to
mm,
make sure that all of everybody who's coming back is got the right tools to make it happen.
I love that.
Let's do it. Oh, so where should we send people online right now while we're still getting this runway going before launch or after? Where can they hear more of the story, hopefully donate, support
Yeah.
you guys? Where's the best place?
So the story has a pretty good narrative on our GoFundMe link. The website has definitely got the front page has got some of the story, but we're providing clay to the community, and a friend of ours has loaned us some of their warehouse space. And so we've stocked clay in there. That's the one part of the business that's still operating. That's on our website. Social media is a great place. My most popular, I have a lot of social media pages, but my most popular one is Sarah Wells Rolland Ceramic Art. And I live stream on there, and I've been giving updates and also making pots. So the website, the GoFundMe, your podcast obviously is going to be a really great place for people to hear about what's happened and where we're heading now. And I think that if you go to any of those places, except for the GoFundMe, it'll lead you to the other things.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? But the GoFundMe does have a narrative with updates and images and stuff like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll link it all in the show notes so people can click and support and follow along.
Oh, and the Village Potters social media page. That one too. We have it on Instagram. I'm not a big Instagram girl. I struggle with it. I don't know why. And so there's way more information that I share on Facebook. It's probably about my age. Because people say, well, Facebook is for the older people. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
That's why you have Lori. This is also why it takes a team because Lori's on top of the Instagram. Katie's on top, there's
Lori is technically savvy. She is very technically savvy. So she's not a spring chicken, but she is brilliant. So there's not much that intimidates her. Oh gosh, I love her so much. I just work with the best people. It's so true. Yeah.
You really do. And I haven't even like it's funny, just in the couple of times we've chatted over the years, your whole group creates such a I don't have anybody watching on YouTube now is gonna see the hand motions I do when I don't have the words. There's just something about the ethos of the whole group that's been created. It's special. It's something really special.
Well, one of the things we do, and I think this might be the core value of it, is we say people before pots, and we really love pots. And so anytime we ever make a decision, if it's a difficult one, we go, well, wait a minute, it's people before pots. And so that has been a good driver for us. And so people feel safe. We feel safe. Everybody feels loved and cared for. We really do. It's been very successful. We remind each other that. If we get a little, it's like, oh, wait a minute, remember? People before pots. So we keep, what was it Michelle Obama said? If they go low, we go high. The people before pots keeps us in perspective. That, yeah, we're a pottery center, we're a clay center. But what we really are about is community and people and connection. That's what we're really about. And the clay is the vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the excuse for people to show up.
Yeah. And therapy.
Yeah.
That.
And also filling a gap in the healthcare system. Oh, everybody knew it would show up in the
I swear,
conversation.
creative expression is when people tell me they're not creative, I just go, that's not possible. It's in you. Creative expression is so freeing. It's so healing. So many people have taken a workshop with me, and all we've done all week is make pots. And at the end of the workshop, they're crying and hugging me and said, this has been a healing experience for me. And I'm like, we made pots. There was no prayers. There was no, you know, mantras. It's just healing.
I agree with you. I would also say to have this on record for yourself, that also has to do with you. You can learn pottery from a really crappy teacher and not feel healed by the end of the week. You can walk away with more stress than you started with. It is possible.
I guess that's right. Yeah. I've had a lot of healing myself. And, that makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way the whole crew just shows up. And again, we've never physically been in the same room as each other. I'm just talking about showing up on a digital screen. There's just something about the way everybody shows up. It's something really special.
It
So
really is.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've got plenty more to get to, and I could literally just keep you on the phone for an entire day.
I
So
love talking to you, Rebecca. It always warms my heart
thank you. Thank you.
every time. I hope you can get down here.
Okay.
Where are you, by the way?
Oh, it's going to happen. We're in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. Okay.
Yep. Which didn't know that Wisconsin had as much of a clay history as it does until we moved here. Talk about cost of living. That's really just, we moved close enough from Chicago that I could keep my photography clients, but also save a buck, to be honest. But yeah, what was hilarious when we did move, and people may have heard this story before, we truly by accident, by happenstance, moved 3 blocks away from another potter.
Now
He's gone and moved. Thank you very much, Andrew. You're still in trouble for that. But, just by happenstance, we drove home one day, skipped a block on accident, and saw this banner on the side of somebody's fence that was a picture of a wood-fired pot. And I was like, what the heck?
even a cool potter.
Exactly.
Potters love the wood-fired pots.
Right? I was like, what's going on? So
Oh,
it's also shown me how much you can, even in moving places and going somewhere where you have less connections or whatnot, you really can build community, especially with clay. We're great.
we are. Yeah, yes. We say that at the village. We do. Yeah, yes. I got that from my friend Melanie Robertson, but she used to just say that. Yeah, yes. It was very encouraging.
That's awesome. Oh, I love it.
I might get a banner of that for our grand opening.
100. I think that's the title of the party. That's the theme. That's the whole thing. Absolutely.
The us is everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy that came to pick up his clay. I don't know what he'd experienced in the flood. I don't know. But when he picked up his clay, it was already prepaid for. And he said, I don't have much money, but I want to give this as a donation to the village. And it was $9. It was $9. And I mean, Zoo and I were crying. She told him, no, 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 no. And he said, no, I really want to do it. And I have his name to thank him because I feel like that $9 is so powerful. There's just some kind of miracle wrapped up in it when people give from that kind of place. And it just touched my heart so much. So we've been given lots of money. And then someone like that just gives the little bit that they have. Potters.
Yep.
Yay, us. He's in the us.
I love it. Oh, yep. Time to start looking at flights.
All right.
I'm coming.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the time and just everything you guys are doing. Oh, I can't wait to see 2.0.
2.0. I'm going to keep you in the know. And I'm going to get to hug you. I just know it.
Yes. Can't wait.
Thank you, my friend.
Admittedly, Sarah and I recorded this episode before the LA wildfires had even begun. So now there are, of course, even more GoFundMes for potters and artists who are in need of help and recovery. And if I think too hard about it, frankly, it overwhelms me. Not knowing where to start and feeling wholly incapable of donating enough funds. However, re-listening to Sarah's story just now and that meaningful $9 donation reminds me to shake off the helpless feelings and simply do something. Whether you're able to donate to the Village Potters Fund, which the link is in our show notes of this episode, or if you have another fellow maker you've already lent a helping hand to. Frankly, even simply sharing this episode with your own community or on social media as a refreshing break for all of us from the doom scrolling, I believe we must stay focused on staying together, on working together, on building community, on supporting each other with whatever resources we can, be it financially or emotionally, through donations of time or talent, or of our very own audiences who we can spread the word to, who in turn can help in their own ways. Because as always, but especially after disaster, it's together that we've got this. This episode is sponsored by Haystack School of Crafts. From a stunning coastal Maine campus, Haystack connects people through craft by providing time and space to engage with materials, develop new ideas, and work in a creative and supportive community. From June through August, Haystack offers 1- and 2-week studio workshops to participants of all skills levels taught by professional artists from the U.S. and abroad, as well as the 2-week open studio residency program. For 2025, Haystack is offering a brand new 4-day session called Square One, expressly created for beginners. Registration is now open for the 2025 summer season, but the fellowship application deadline is today, January 24th. The general workshop and Square One application deadline is February 7th, and the open studio residency application deadline is March 14th. You can find more information on all that Haystack offers by visiting haystack-mtn.org. That's HAYSTACK M as in mom, T as in Tom, N as in no.org. Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotzfan, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality. Because together, we've got this.
This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.